Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World. How was that one? Ascended. Because I saw Yasmin come up. So in my head, I was thinking, hi, Yasmin. And I said Ascended. On Ascended World, which I don't even think we said our names on the last video for the Wonderland this morning.
I'm pretty sure they know who we are.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, great. Hey, Sandra and Yasmin so far. So anyway, now we shift gears, sorta, because we're like, okay, so
never really shift gears out of not what you think it is.
That's right. It really all is not what you think it is typically, because the thinking, right, goes to the mind.
Yep.
So when we start talking about this, and it was interesting because this came up in a conversation last week in a session that I was doing about being addicted to drama. Hey again, Nicole. Hey again, Karen. Glad you guys all came back and hung out. So,
right.
So, we say, and so many of us, so here's the thing. So many of us will say, oh, I'm not addicted to drama. No, I just have no interest in that. Right.
Or I don't participate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it's funny because I was in a session with a client last week, and one of the things we've been working on is breaking her pattern of that addiction, right? Because she's like, no, I really truly believe that I can have an easy and fun and like joyous life that's flowing. And she's, yet I still have all these stories that I create, around myself and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay.
And repeat.
Right. And so I'm like, so then you're still, then it's important for us to work on breaking the addiction. Right. She's like, well, I wouldn't say I'm addicted. I'm like, oh, we're all addicted. That's why we live here in a physical body, because if we didn't,
it's all about the sensation.
Right. The sensations, which we create trauma. And the more intense, right? The more dramatic. So, and we say, oh yeah, well, I just don't watch the news. I just don't pay attention to all that. And it's like, okay, yeah. All right. And so it's funny. She's like, well, I have changed all that. And I said, okay. And so my guidance was to just simply go, okay, so, here's one. Vaccine or no vaccine. And I just sort of sat there and didn't say anything, didn't input anything. And it was bait, right? It was bait to see if she would just grab it.
Right.
Which she did. She just grabbed right into it.
Right.
And it was, blah, blah, blah. And everybody is just as passionate about their, their choice and beliefs, regardless of, it seems to be like whatever side or part they're on. And, and then she's like, oh, well, because of this and this and this. And then it was becoming more and more like, animated as we were talking. And then she ended up pulling me into the discussion. And then 5 minutes go by and I go, see that? See how easy that was? It was like crack.
Right. Well, and I mean, the way the environment is, political environment, or the, just the humanity in general right now. I mean, what topic doesn't invoke drama?
Right.
There's government, there's the environment, there's COVID, there's masks, there's vaccines, there's
racial hate, there's all that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, everything invokes that passionate response. And the question is, what do you do with that passionate response?
Right. Yeah.
Which, do you follow your guidance? Do you trust your guidance? All these things, or do you just, throw fuel on the fire?
Right.
And I think that that's where, because that's what the media does. That's what the government does. Anyone who wants to further their agenda uses the drama.
Right. And so we think of them, and so then we say, oh, I can see that, but I'm not a part of that. But we do, because then we get
well, and social media doesn't help, because, these things that are posted, some of them are just downright funny. And so you repost them.
Right. I know. I know, and they get more airtime, you know, and then there's all the, then it's all the belief underneath that for my journey to be interesting, it has to be dramatic,
Right.
right? For my story to be interesting, it has to be dramatic. For me to be, you know, to have a fulfilling human experience, it has to be dramatic.
Right. And I
So,
can gain others' attention through the drama.
yes. Oh, easily. And we turn the drama into a hierarchy, right? I mean, that's the funniest part.
Yes,
Because you know, the
that's very
example
true.
the
I've looked
example
at it
I
that
gave
way.
the example I gave this client, we were talking about it, and I said, and I use this all the time because it's one of the easiest ones for people to like recognize. I'm like, you know, a while back, like years ago, when my husband and I were first talking about all this stuff, you know, I had said, you know, you can change the tone because he would complain about, oh, well, you know, I get pulled into these discussions and it just is such a waste of time, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, you can just change the tone. You don't have to be a part of them.
Right.
He's like, well, you know, what do you mean? I said, well, so everybody's, you know, hanging out, talking, say at lunch or on break or whatever. And somebody comes in and says, oh God, I had this flat tire this morning or over the weekend. Right. Well, what happens? Every person starts jumping in with their own flat tire stories, and every single one tries to be more dramatic than the last story that was told.
Right.
Right.
My other favorite one is the childbirth.
Oh, totally, totally. Women in childbirth, right? And
Right.
it's and I used to think, oh my gosh, the two times I was pregnant, like, and that would be when women would just walk up to me and give me their horrific childbirth stories, right?
Right.
And so, and it's like it's so funny because yeah, when somebody's pregnant or we start talking about it, then it's all like, and it becomes as oh, who had a more dramatic birth, who had
Right.
a more, you know, different thing or whatever. And it's so funny because that's all an addition to drama. Because then you walk away going, yep, I get the gold star because I had the most dramatic story.
Well, and what happens is you start to form relationships based in the drama.
Yes. Well, a lot of our relationships, right?
Right. Based in the drama, and it becomes I don't know, it becomes that superficial kind of relationships. And you find that, you know, sometimes the majority of your time is spent in that superfluous interactions. And
Yes.
it just, you lose your depth. I guess that's judgment. You choose to only go so deep when you
Right.
stay in the drama.
Well, it's a distraction, right? It's a distraction with the story, the very 3D story, right?
Right.
So it's funny because, you know, many people have said, "Oh, well, you should write a story about, you know, write it all down, like your whole journey to getting to, you know, this place of consciousness and whatever." And it's like, okay, but how far do I go back? I don't want to go back that far, right? And they're like, "Oh, but you have such great story." And it's like, yeah, I mean, and many people say to me, "Well, what well, not many, there are some that have said to me, well, you don't understand because you know you haven't gone through this." And I'm like, well, how do you know I haven't gone through that?
Just because I don't.
Just because I don't wear it on my sleeve doesn't mean I haven't. It
Right.
means that I've looked at it, I've seen it for what it was worth, I saw the lessons that it created for me, I thanked it, and then I moved on, you
Right.
know.
But that doesn't make the good book, the good movie, the good
Right.
story. And
Right.
that's just
Dramatic story, which is funny because, you know, time and time again, like, you know what, I've been talking about writing books for years, which I've wanted to always do, and all that kind of stuff. And I have so much material. Well, we have so much material, right? We're talking about all that. And yet, when it comes to like a discussion of a personal nature or a personal journey, I'm just like, well, I don't really identify myself with that. I just
right.
know what I set out for myself to get to where I am, right? I recognize that that's what I wanted to have as my experience. And so that's what I did.
Right.
And I don't walk around going, oh, because, you know, here's the thing. How many people go, oh, I'm just empathic. I can't do anything about that. There's an addiction to drama.
Right. And victimhood and a
And
few other things.
yeah. Or, you know, I've always been this way, or, oh, I've always, all my victimhood has been from that. or all that kind of stuff. And there's no judgment on that. It's just that this is all these embedded, like dramatic beliefs that we believe we have to like, use to incorporate. So it's funny because, how many, all right, here's another one. Here's a great one. Here's the basis of so many relationships is all you talk about is physical and illnesses and injury.
Right. Right.
And, I hear, and especially it happens a lot in the older generations, right? That's all they talk about. Oh, well, this, hurts me. Oh, well, yeah, I went to the doctor for this. And oh, well, yeah, I'm being treated for this. And it's like,
Well,
and
it starts to define you.
right. It starts to define you. And then you create it more, which is all part of that whole, how we are the creators of our realities. So
Right.
the funny thing is, when you are when you're embedded, when you are saturated in those kind of conversations all the time, and all you do is talk about what's wrong,
Right.
right? And when we talk about what's wrong, it tends to be the drama, right?
Right. So really the question to ask yourself is, what do you want? Do you want to choose that? Is that what you want the basis of your life to be?
Yes.
Or do you want to choose that empowerment and that empowering creation and embracing something different than the drama?
Yes. Yeah. Because, and when we say drama, I mean, because we can have positive drama too, right? That's something we don't really think about. But whenever we give a hierarchy to something, in terms of, but we do tend to, like, especially right now, we're very saturated in negativity, as a collective. But when you're saturated in it, it's really challenging to change direction, right? To say, well, how could I even connect? Because we believe that's what connects us as humans.
Right. Is and that's what invokes compassion.
Yep.
And so from that perspective, it's like, it's that detached compassion is, I honor your journey if this is the choice that you're making, if this is the choice you're making for your journey, but I don't have to participate in it.
Well, and then all of a sudden everybody starts calling you you're uncompassionate, which I've had plenty of, right? Because it's like, oh, well, okay. And then I've had people judge me harshly because I don't react, right? I don't have like some incensed opinion about something. I had one person one time reach out to me. I mean, this has happened multiple times, but I remember this one particular instance where this person reached out to me and wanted me to help them with some stuff they were going through. Oh, excuse me. And this one individual was so, and wanted, was adamant about keeping it private because they didn't want to know other people. They don't want people to know that they needed to get help themselves. And it's like, okay. But I mean, it's not like I go, I mean, and I have that all the time because there's so many, we're all going through stuff, whatever. So there's many people who are out there in the public and whatever. Anyway, so she was in the public. Then she had been partnered up with this other person who then she felt like had really dissed her, right? So like they had done everything together. They had done some programs together. The other person just sort of left and moved to like faraway state and like started doing these other programs and apparently used that basis for the programs that she created. So this other person felt very jilted and she felt very used and
betrayed
because that other person like had the appearance of having become very successful, didn't give her any credit, wouldn't even take her phone calls anymore and stuff like that. And so and so she was going on and on about how bad this person was and all this kind of stuff. And I said, okay, well, what's going to be important in the session work we do is coming to realization of why you would have chosen that for yourself.
Right. Well, and that gets into the self-responsibility.
Right. And then it was like, and she kept on trying to get me. And what she wanted me to, because I knew the other person as well, was she wanted to bring up drama with me and get me to sort of gang up with her on the other person. And like, everybody's got their own journey.
Right. Right. And it's that, and it is a fine line of walking that, honoring others' journey while supporting that.
Right. Right. And the thing is always to look at, what did I choose to create this in reflection back to me? Right.
Right.
So when I refused to get pulled into that drama and I stayed very neutral, and I was just like, okay, so this is what we'll work on, is what I'm being guided to say we would work on, is what you're holding on within you that still needs to have that victim, that victimhood role and all of blah, blah, blah. And she got very offended and then just canceled. And then she like wouldn't even talk to me again. And I thought that was really interesting, because I'm like, okay, but that was because I wouldn't get in there. And I've had many people get irritated with me, and because I am very neutral in that way, because once you get into expanded consciousness and you see the value of everybody's journey, the thing is that regardless of how crappy it looks, you've chosen that.
Well, and I think that something that's tied into that is the expectations that come along with, I expect you to have sympathy for me. I expect you to support me. I expect you to honor my victimhood.
Well, not only honor it, but exalt it, right?
Right.
And so when we start honoring, when we don't exalt it and we go, oh, honey, it's okay, that's terrible that happened to you. Like, that's culturally what we expect, right? Oh, let me hug you, and, let's just see how we can make it okay and everything else. And it's like, but the reality is, it is what it is. And the best thing to do something about it is to say, okay, so what is it that I hold inside of me that caused that to reflect back to me in my reality?
Right. Right.
And so there's no drama in that, except the ego going, I don't want to look at that because I want somebody to feel bad for me, so that then I get more attention.
And that gets into, but this is not what I meant to create for myself.
Mm-hmm.
This is not what I meant to create for myself. So I should have people feel sorry for me because this is not what I wanted. Or I should have people help me to understand how this happened.
Right. Right. And it's, and the thing is, how can we ever be truly empowered when we're so addicted to being the victim?
Right.
Right. And that's where the dramahood comes, the drama, because we love the attention that's garnered on us by the drama. Right. Even if even if it's what we call like negative attention, it still works.
Oh, absolutely. And most people, not most people, there are quite a few people who will prefer that over the positive attention.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's because that's all they know.
Right.
And that's the whole thing, is it takes a whole lot of self-awareness, right, to shift that, because the first step is being observant to that, your part in that, and taking the responsibility for creating that.
Right. Exactly. Because once you've come to that awareness, then you start looking at all the pieces that support that. Which that's when, I look at it as like a house of cards. That's when your cards start falling, because there's so many cards holding it up, that it's not just one thing. And the observation of seeing how it all magically holds together as long as all those pieces are there.
Right. Right. So, yeah. There's, and we have to, and we do, like, we start pulling out those cards, right? And the whole house falls when you stop being the victim, stop creating the drama, stop having to have the dramatic, story,
and
to
stop
get
perpetuating others as well.
And stop, what was that? You cut out for a second.
Stop perpetuating others.
Right. Right. And so it's funny because, like, I even have my own mother tell me I'm uncompassionate all the time. And it's not because of anything except that I listen in a neutral, observant way. when she talks about stuff and I don't, go, oh, that's really, that really sucks, or, blah, blah, blah. I just go, okay. I don't judge it. But I think a lot of times people think you're judging it when you're being neutral.
Well, I think that's the lack of experience.
Yeah. I mean, because here's the thing. And you don't really realize that until you start getting to a place where, like you're constantly, and I had to go through that for a number of years. It's this constant reminder. And I'm fully aware when I get pulled into something dramatic, right? Like the discussion I was talking about, whatever, with my client. And it's just to not judge ourselves about it, to simply change the tide, like to say, oh, you know what? I'm creating drama. I can just, yeah. Gloria says that it forces us to truly look within yourself. It does. Because then it starts to.
It forces you to also look at your expectations of others. So if you present a circumstance to someone and feel that they are not supportive, somewhere in there you expected them to be a certain way and they didn't meet that expectation.
Yeah.
So I think that like, again, there's just so many facets to it and so many pieces.
Well, and it's all ego. It's the ego getting, fearful. Well, fearful creates drama, right? Anxiety creates drama. Anger creates drama, right? So all of that creates dramatic reactions. So, a great experience that, I can talk about is, my mom, when she went in, she was having like heart palpitations, and, or whatever, what do you call it? AFib, right? And she had gone in, she had it for a long time, and her blood pressure was way up. And so she called me up and said she was going to go to the hospital. So my guidance, and I remember that night I had a session, and she called me up and said she was going to go to the hospital because of that. And then I said, okay, would you like me to take you? Because if she's having heart issues or whatever, and she's driving to the hospital, I don't want her having a heart attack, like while she's driving to the hospital. Right. So I asked, guidance was to ask her if she wanted me to take her. So then she said, would you? And I said, okay. So I canceled my session, but I didn't tell her, like, I didn't say, oh, well, I have a session tonight, and, I guess I could cancel it for you. Like, it was just like, okay, I'll just come get you. Right. So I canceled my session. I went and got her. I tried calming her down before we went to the hospital. Like, said, can we do a little meditation together? Which she resisted. I had meditative music on in the car, whatever. And so we were talking about all this stuff, and I was just keeping her calm. But I was talking about things like, gardening, or, pottery, the things she enjoys, right? That
shift that focus.
And so we got to but guidance was that she was going to be fine. She just needed to do some adjustments, right? And so I trusted that. Back to trust. So I wasn't afraid of anything. And we got to the hospital and all that kind of stuff, and they checked her in, and I'm just sort of sitting there. And she's talking to nurses, and she's talking to everybody around her, and then the PA that comes to see her, and about how, oh, this is my daughter. She's just not compassionate. She's not like 3 times. She's just not compassionate. Because I was non-reactive, right? And so it was funny because the funniest part was, we got to the whole night and and then I was going, and Scott had met me down there, and then I was like, okay, so we're going to go and feed your animals and take care of your animals while you're in here, all that kind of stuff. No problem. Like I wasn't like all crazy about it and anything else. So it was like I was going to walk out the door, and she said that one like a 3rd time about not being compassionate. And I turned around and I said, you are confusing being compassionate with being reactive and dramatic. And no, I am not that. But if I did not care, I would not be here. If I was not guided, I wouldn't be here. And I am. So there you have it. I said, I love you. I kissed her and I left, But it's interesting because it's such a and she's gotten much better at accepting me for being that way, but it's really challenging our culture, because our culture that's how we connect, is in our drama.
Well, and so that's where the built-in expectations come.
Right.
And I know whenever I personally have felt unsupported, it's like, oh, well, I had an expectation of X, Y, and Z, and it wasn't met. So it's not necessarily the person that needs to be examined, it's the expectation.
Right. Right. Are you upset because I didn't fuss over you? Like, make a big dramatic scene or whatever, like that kind of stuff. And that's really what to look at. It's like, well, that's just expectation and ego and
Right.
feeding the drama. Right. So we have that happen all the time. And pick your trigger word, pick whatever the trigger, not the trigger, the
Right.
trigger topic, because we
Right.
all have one, at least one that will get us going.
Yeah.
Which what it does is it just engages the ego, right? And lets the ego go off on a rant or whatever. And then we've just come into this whole ego run, set of experiences at this, in this particular density and dimension, set of dimensions, where that's how we connect that's how we've learned to connect or chosen to connect with each other in these bodies. When at the end of the day, what really connects us comes from a space of love, right? And when we let go of the drama, then we find that the landscape of who we choose to be around is a much different landscape.
Right. Well, and as I said, we're all in it for the sensation. Mm-hmm. And the drama it's like adding salt to your food. It just drives that up, drives that sensation up. And it's, we all need to be on that salt-free diet.
Eventually you won't miss it. And when you add the salt and it's like, oh, that's just way too much, right? But I used to say that when I would go to do our retreats in Mount Shasta and stuff, that I always felt so at home in those spaces, because it was originally the only time that I felt like I was 100% me. Right. And part of it was because there was no drama in all of the deep work that we did and everything else. We come together in a space of love. We come together in a space of expansion and remembrance and connection.
Right.
We don't have to do anything to prove we're connected, like put that compassion thing, like that pity party or the compassion thing or the have the drama. And believe me, we've had drama in many of the retreats.
Right.
But what tends to happen is it is simply the individual who at some point, if we don't feed it, which is really important, is not to feed it, then eventually it becomes a mirror. And then the individual goes, okay, so why did I create that for myself?
Exactly. Right. Which, that's the bottom line, is getting to that place of that self-responsibility to say, okay, where in my life did I feel I needed this in order to have created it?
Right. And so what happens is when we take ourselves, and so the example of these retreats are really important, because when we're in this space of mutual support and oneness and wholeness, and we allow ourselves to honor each other's journeys, on our own journeys, right, and hold that space. We all have moments when we have breakdowns, when we have drama, whatever, the ego goes kicking and screaming, but that's the purpose of what we're there. And so what we're there for. So if we feed into that, then all that does is perpetuate the issue instead of create the mirror, which is what it's there to create.
Right. That allows the resolution.
Right. So if we stop feeding into the drama, then we can step back and look at the mirror and look at things more clearly as to see what the big picture is. Yeah. It's the shiny, right? The shinies, the dog and pony shows that are the distractions of the drama.
Right.
And we have all that even in the spiritual world, much of it.
I have my own little dog show going on here.
Yeah. So it's such a weird, it's such an unusual thing for us. Like, and we don't even see it. Like, so we think that, it stops with not watching the news, or whatever, but it's embedded. And when we talk negatively, and when we start to recognize we're the creators of our own reality, then we realize we create all the negativity that we talk about because we continue to talk about it.
Right.
And when we start to talk about things, and this is where it stops being dramatic, where I say, okay, well, this happens. And I don't give it the weight of it being dramatic or being more important than other things, because it is what it is and it's there to show me something, right? And when everything becomes, it's just there to show me something, what is it for me to look at? And then there's the less tendency for the ego to start reacting.
Right. Right.
Even when what? When you get pissed at somebody else, right? Oh, excuse me, when you get angry at somebody else. Normally there's my New Yorker that comes out. But anyway, so yeah, when you get angry or irritated at somebody else, eventually you get to a place of saying, okay, instead of getting into the drama of, well, they did this wrong to me and they this and they that and da 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 and they're so deficient and da da da. Instead, if you say, okay, why did I create that in my reality? Like, what is that supposed to show me? Because if it was not there to show me anything, I wouldn't have a trigger. I would just be like,
I would not have created this way for me to mirror back at me.
yeah.
I would not have created this if there wasn't a perceived need.
Right. So that's where a lot of people say things like, well, what happens if, yeah, okay, talking about being love all the time is one thing, but what happens with people like this?
Right.
And I'll say, well, people like that are you too. We're all God. We're all the same, or whatever you want to call it, divine consciousness or whatever, right?
Right.
And so when we start looking at that as just a reflection on the other side of the looking glass.
Right. Those triggers are where we need healing.
Yeah.
Or where we believe we need healing.
Right. Right. And they're typically things that prevent us from moving forward into a more expanded consciousness until we resolve them within ourselves. So we think the game is to create more drama, but the game is actually that now that we've created all this drama, to remove it.
Well, and it's what is the phrase, where the attention goes, the energy flows.
Yep.
So as you change your attention from the drama to the joy, I would much rather that to flow than the drama to flow.
Right. Well, it becomes so much easier.
Right.
And that's what I realized when I would say that when we'd be out in Mount Shasta is, this is so easy. I feel like it's so easy to be me here. Right. So it's like, and I was like, well, so then I had to look at that. Well, why do I feel easy for it to be me here now, but not when I'm home, or not when I'm like in my day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
And then my focus became, well, then it's important for me to look at what it is that I need to shift so that, that I don't have it in my everyday life. Or
right.
so I do have it in my everyday life.
Right. That same level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we all need. That's what we all are on the road to learning how to shift our everyday lives.
Yep. So, okay. So what's our thing?
Our focus, I think, is just the recognition of where the drama is.
Yeah, where we get lost in it. Yeah, probably it's like I am aware of my own addiction to drama, right? I'm aware of my own.
Or my own participation.
Oh, yeah. I like that word even better.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm aware of my own participation in drama. And I am worthy to remember how to allow myself to change it to allow just remembrance and being, which.
Oh, that's nice.
Feels nice. Yeah. All right. Everybody close your eyes, take a deep breath. Let's hold ourselves at that vibration where that is our truth, where we exist from.
That was one of those where I almost laughed in the middle of it. Felt like I was an eagle flying over, looking down at people, almost like in a grocery store, picking their drama.
Mhm. Yeah, picking their drama. That's funny. Yeah, I saw. It was funny because it was almost like a big, like one of those big dry erase boards, right? And it was like this whole chart, all these different things, and it was like, oh, well, and like there's this collective, and it was like a collective thing, and it was like, oh, well, can we just erase this? And then you hear, no, 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 we want to hold on to that. Like, way too much. And I was like, no, but it's if we do this, then it releases like 5 or 6 other things, and then we just started doing some key ones, and it was like taking out other stuff, and that was really effective. And then it was like, well, what fun is that? And it's like, well, that's great fun because it's such huge, huge bliss to be
Well,
able to,
freeing up that amount of energy.
yeah, like because here's what we're addicted to. We are addicted. This is what came to me. We're addicted to negative reinforcement. Which is the removal of negative stimulus. So what happens is we remove it and we go, oh, that feels so good. It's like I've forgotten what it feels like to be in this natural state, right? Because we have glorified being not in that state. So, good stuff. All right, everyone. So be observant.
Right.
Be observant this week. And it doesn't have to just be the news. Look at your everyday life. Look at your discussions with other people and your interactions, and then see what where there's room for shifting.
Yes. And then join us tomorrow morning when we do day 4, even though it's just the 3rd class on hidden messages and guidance for
Wonderland.
Wonderland. Not what you think.
Not what you think. All right, everyone. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah C. Gavinioni
signing off. We'll see you next time on Ascended World. Bye.